All right, let's talk about something that I bet hits home for a lot of you. It's that feeling of being scattered, of being unfocused, like you just can't pick one thing and stick with it. Well, if that's you, you're in the right place. We're about to completely reframe that feeling. We're going to talk about the M-shaped mind and how what feels like your biggest weakness is actually your greatest superpower. So, does this question, hit a little too close to home? If you look around your life and see all this evidence of hobbies that you started with like a fiery passion, only to see them get abandoned a few months later, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's this weird mix of guilt and confusion, and trust me, it is incredibly common. I mean, let's just take a little walk through this graveyard, shall we? For some of you, it's that guitar that's just collecting dust in the corner. For others, it's that website you were so excited to build and it's still only half-coded. Or maybe it's that expensive set of baking tools you used twice. And who hasn't had that sudden, intense urge to become a martial arts expert that just kind of fizzled out? Whatever your specific examples are, they all belong right here. And what's the story you're always told about this, right? It's that you're chaotic, that you don't have the grit to specialize, that you're a dabbler. And all of that just feeds this nagging feeling that you're some kind of imposter just because you can't seem to pick one single lane and stay in it for the rest of your life. But here is the big question. This is the one we're really going to unpack today. What if this isn't a character flaw at all? What if your brain is actually building something rare, something powerful, a cognitive architecture that is perfectly designed for a future where being a specialist is actually a huge liability? To get started, we've got to correct a massive piece of misinformation. There's this famous phrase that has been used to shame people like us for decades. You've probably even used it on yourself more than once. But here's the thing, you've only been told half the story. Yeah, you know this part, right? It's the classic insult, the idea that by knowing a little bit about a lot of things, you end up being truly good at nothing. It's the phrase that just fuels that feeling of being an imposter. But that's not the full quote, not even close. Here it is, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Just let that sink in for a second. The phrase we've all been using as an insult was originally a compliment, and this forgotten truth, it reframes everything. Having a wide range of skills isn't a failure, it's a feature. It's a strategic advantage. So why is being a jack of all trades suddenly so much more valuable today? Well, it's because the world itself has fundamentally changed. Those stable, predictable environments where specialization was king, they're disappearing fast. The old rules just don't apply anymore. This slide just lays it all out perfectly. For the last century, we were all playing an I-shaped game. Think of it as a kind learning environment, kind of like golf. The rules were stable. If you practiced your one swing for 10,000 hours, you were gonna win. But today, we live in a wicked environment. The rules are constantly changing, sometimes overnight. That specialist who only has one swing, they're fragile. In this new world, it's adaptability that wins, not just deep practice in one tiny area. So if you're built for this new kind of chaotic world, what are your actual advantages? Well, it turns out that while you were bouncing between all those hobbies, your brain was secretly forging some incredible superpowers. Let's break down the first one. Your first superpower is called far transfer. Now, specialists are great at something called near transfer, applying a skill to a really similar problem. And that's effective, but it's also really limited. You, on the other hand, are a master of far transfer. It's this amazing ability to connect dots that no one else even realizes are on the same page. This slide is a perfect example. So imagine a web developer who, in a past life, was a beekeeper. On the surface, those two things have nothing to do with each other, right? But their deep understanding of how a beehive works, a complex, adaptive, organic system, gives them a totally unique mental model for building software ecosystems. That's an insight a pure specialist coder might never, ever have. And that is where real innovation comes from. Okay, your second superpower is something that usually sounds like a bad thing: redundancy. In engineering, it can mean waste, but in nature and in your career, redundancy is a survival mechanism. It's your safety net of skills that makes you incredibly resilient, unbreakable even. And this analogy is just perfect. Elephants have multiple copies of a really important cancer-fighting gene. It's genetic redundancy. A specialist is like an animal with only one copy. If it fails, they're in big trouble. So if you're just a software engineer and AI completely disrupts your fields, you're fragile,
But if you also know about project management and maybe a bit of electrical wiring and how to teach, you're not just resilient, you're anti-fragile. You always have a pivot ready to go.
Okay, so you've got these incredible superpowers. Awesome! But here's the catch. With great power comes a huge risk of burnout. So how do you actually manage all these different interests without feeling totally scattered and overwhelmed? The key is a strategy called mastering your seasons. And this right here is the trap. This is where almost every M-shaped person gets stuck. You're building these multiple pillars of expertise, which is fantastic, but you cannot build them all at the same time. Trying to master data science, write a novel, and launch a business all at once doesn't make you productive. It just leads to collapse. So the solution is something called serial mastery. And it's basically a 3-step process. First, you embrace it. You focus deeply on just one or two things for a set period of time. Second, you start to view your life in seasons, and you accept that your focus is naturally going to shift. And third, you just have to trust the process. Trust that each season, each obsession is building another valuable pillar for your M. And this is kind of how that can look over a lifetime. Your 20s might be your season for art and music. Then in your 30s, maybe you pivot to programming to build a more stable career. And notice you didn't fail at art, you completed that season. Then later you can synthesize all of these skills into something totally new, because each phase was just building the foundation for whatever comes next. Okay, let's bring this all home and really redefine your purpose here. It is time to stop apologizing for the way your mind works and start embracing what you were actually built to do. If you only remember one thing from all of this, please let it be this. The specialist's game is depth. Your game is synthesis. You feel like an imposter because you're playing on the wrong field and you're judging yourself by the wrong set of rules. Your unique value isn't in digging one super deep well, it's in connecting multiple wells to create an entire irrigation system. So I want you to stop looking at that graveyard of hobbies with shame. Those half-finished projects, those abandoned interests, they were not failures. Think of them as semesters in a curriculum that you designed for yourself. You've been out there gathering data points this whole time. This is the ultimate reframe. You are not a pillar. You are a bridge. Your purpose is to connect these totally separate worlds of knowledge, to carry ideas from one domain over to another, creating pathways that specialists buried deep in their fields will never, ever see. So let's just throw out the old question. The question you should be asking yourself isn't, what should I specialize in? The real question, the much more powerful question is, what worlds will I connect? Look at your unique kind of weird combination of skills and passions and ask yourself, what incredible, innovative bridge are you the only person in the